How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I'm your host, James Lynch, joined as always by my co-host, JHK. What's up, my man? How are you?
I'm good, man. Good, man. I was just, I was watching, or I was just going through Facebook, and I ran into this video. Right, it's Yogan De Castro. He has this video, and he's sending it out to Mitch Raposo. He just recently lost his fight on the Ultimate Fighter, and he's like, "Hey, Mitch, I got something for you." And it's Henry Cejudo. He's like, "Mitch, you a bitch. I'm gonna go after you." I don't know. It just made me laugh, man. It was just so funny. I don't know why I just mentioned that, but it was just.
It's all good. I want to go check the video out now. I'll go.
Yeah, it's a good video.
Go
check it out.
So that's pretty cool. If you guys haven't watched the show before, basically we preview an upcoming notable fight, and in today's edition, we're going to be talking about the women's bantamweight title fight that's going to be coming up here pretty soon in a few months. Amanda Nunes taking on Julianna Peña. Before we get into that, though, make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app where you can put in your picks. You can go head to head with John and I every single week. It's the best app on the planet when it comes to MMA picks. I'm very confident in saying that. Go check it out yourself. In fact, go download the app. Look at it, come back to me and tell me I told you so, because you're going to agree with me here. It's a great app. Can't say enough good things about it. And if your iPhone, Android, doesn't matter, it has it on all platforms as well. Also, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on this video. We're looking to grow this channel as big as we can, and we're here every week previewing upcoming notable fights like I mentioned. What else? Follow me on Twitter at Lynch on Sports, and follow John on Twitter at JHKMMA. All right, let's get into it, man. This is a interesting fight. I don't want to disrespect Julianna Peña by saying this, but I might a little bit. And she's a fellow Pacific Northwester like you and I, right? I mean, you used to live in Washington State, so I got a little bit of love here for Julianna. But as far as title shots go, this has got to be one of the ones that's kind of low on the list of deserving title shots. We always talk about how we got here, and the reason we got here is because Amanda Nunes has no one to fight. In terms of the optics of this, and we'll go into their records in a second here. Nunes is going to be fighting at bantamweight for the first time since 2019. That was the last time she defended her title, was against Julianna Peña. I bring that name up because the last loss that Julianna Peña had was against Julianna Peña, which was not one, but 2 fights ago. And so, again, Peña's getting this title shot because he beat Sarah McMahon. I'll give her credit. As soon as she won her last fight, she went on TMZ. She sort of did the promotional work and went out there and put the word out there. And I think Dana was just like, look, Amanda needs a fight. We need someone. There's no one that stands out. So Julianna gets a shot. It's not the worst title shot I've seen, especially considering the optics of the division. But what was your reaction first when you heard that Julianna got the title shot?
I was like, just like everybody else, kind of surprised, but not surprised at the same time, because she does not have anybody to fight except for Aspen Ladd. But Aspen Ladd's been injured, and it's going to take her a little bit longer to get back into training and all of that stuff. So it makes sense, actually, to be honest with you. Like, who else is she already beat Yana Kunitskaya, right? Who's like one step ahead of
Amanda or Julianna?
Amanda. No,
Amanda is not for Kunitskaya, but Kunitskaya lost Aspen Ladd, right? So there's that right as well. I'm just looking at the rankings here, just to kind of, again, we're talking to optics here, and then we'll dig into the fight in a little bit. But if you look at the rankings right now, Durandamy's number 1, who beat Peña. Holmes number 2. No one wants to see that rematch. Plus, Holmes is it would be there would be a rematch, but also Holmes on the shelf with health issues. Aspen's fighting Macy Chasson. Also, I wouldn't want Aspen to come back after that lengthy surgery and then fight Nunes. That's kind of bad matchmaking, in my opinion. Lad's still very young. I think the Macy Chasson fight makes a lot of sense. And then you've got Kunitskaya, who I think she did win her last fight, right? If I'm not mistaken. But she's fighting Aldana now, I believe, right? If I'm not mistaken. Let me just look here. Yeah, she's fighting Aldana. So maybe could have made the case for Kunitskaya, but if we're going by rankings, I guess Peña's right behind her. I don't know. I mean, it's A or B. I guess, the options are kind of slim. But the thing with Peña is, she won the Ultimate Fighter. She's got that clout. And then also, if you look at her losses, they're against fighters that are pretty top-notch. Shevchenko, Durandamy. I mean, we're talking all against. Actually, they're all champions, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, every single one has been champions in the UFC. She lost to Deanna Bennett, but we're going to ignore that. So anyways, that's how we got here. That's basically the optics of this fight as well, too. So, what was I going to say? Let's see. If you guys have any questions, just post them in the chat here. We'll get to them as soon as we do the breakdown. Let's start first with the champ, Amanda Nunes. 21-4 record, 33 years old, 5'8" with a 69-inch reach. We mentioned this first fight for her back at bantamweight since December of 2019. she's not lost since that fight against Kat Zingano back in 2014. And people always bring up the 4 losses, John, and it kind of bothers me because it's as though like fighters can't improve, right? Like there's some fighters that just happen to have a better line of opponents that maybe are easier to fight and they can go undefeated. And in the case of Nunes, I mean, Kat Zingano at the time was undefeated, or was she was undefeated at the time. So not a bad loss to have if you look at it back then. But since then, she's been an absolute wrecking ball. A lot of finishes. I mean, people consider her the pound for pound best. There's good reason for that. Not only does she have quality wins, but she has finishes over these quality opponents as well. We're talking Chris Cyborg. Huge win there, right? That's what won her the featherweight title. She's beat Valentina Shevchenko twice, although I think that second fight could have gone the either way. We'll get into that a little bit later. She knocked out Holly Holm. She finished Raquel Pennington. She beat Felicia Spencer at featherweight, and then she also finished Megan Anderson in the very first round as well. She also beat Rousey. I forgot that's the big win, of course, is her beating Ronda Rousey. So, there's just a lot of, impressive wins on her resume. There's a reason they call her the GOAT. But I'd say in terms of opponents that she's had, I mean, at bantamweight anyways, we'll forget about featherweight because I think we can all agree Megan was probably the weakest opponent she's fought at featherweight. But in terms of bantamweight, this is probably the weakest opponent she's had since Raquel Pennington. Would you agree? And what are your thoughts on Amanda in terms of what she's been able to do over the last couple of years?
Yeah, Amanda's been on a phenomenal streak. If you just look back at competitive fights, the last competitive fight she was in was against Shevchenko, which was in September of 2017. That's a pretty insane statistic, right? That's the last time someone actually took her, and had her in trouble or anything like that. And since then, man, she's just racked off just win after win after win, just dominantly. And man, it's just, I don't know. It's you cannot deny her status. Like, she is probably the most accomplished. I don't know about most accomplished, probably one of the greatest. And it's neck and neck with Cyborg, right? Cyborg's there. She's the most accomplished. You cannot deny that, right? She's won belts in 4 different organizations, major organizations. But Amanda, man, the streak that she's on and the way that she's been beating these girls, it's phenomenal. You can never deny she's etched in history. And when you look back at it, crazy statistic is in her last, I believe, 8 fights, she's either won by first round finish or by decision in 5 rounds. Isn't that weird?
No, I know. It's one or the other. It's very, very, very odd. And just, you mentioned Cyborg there quickly. That might go down as one of the biggest disappointments in MMA. We talk about Fedor not fighting in the UFC. We talk about fights that never came to fruition. Cain Velasquez and Stipe Miocic. The rematch between Cyborg and Nunes has got to be on that list. Because look, I know she beat Cyborg, but Cyborg hasn't lost since then. She's picked up some good wins, and full disclosure here, I do a podcast with Chris, but still, aside from all that, that is a fight I want to see. I want to see the rematch. I want to see if Chris can make the adjustments to beat Amanda Nunes, because I think the second fight would be much different. Every fighter's got an off night. I mean, George St. Pierre's a prime example. Lost to Matt Serra, right? He's had losses. Fighters, every now and then can have an off night, but I think that's the one fight where we're kind of like, man, it's too bad we're not going to get to see it, because I think, other than Valentina Shevchenko, Amanda Nunes has pretty much destroyed all of her opponents, right? For the most part. So it'll be interesting to see how this fight sort of goes as well. By the way, do we have odds for this fight? I'm assuming that if we do, there we go, minus 750 for Amanda Nunes, meaning you have to bet $750 on Amanda Nunes just to make $100. So wow. Very, very interesting in terms of the odds there. I don't disagree with that necessarily. But let's dive into Julianna Peña here. She is an Ultimate Fighter winner. We'll talk about who she beat on that episode, or on that season, I should say. She is 31 years old, so a little bit younger here than Nunes. Actually, not by much. I mean, Nunes is 33. Peña's 31. It's not a huge age gap there. You think of Nunes being a bit older just because she's a mom and all that stuff, but not that much older. She's 5'6" with a 69-inch reach. So same reach advantage, and Nunes is a little bit taller than Peña, just with 2 inches. What got Peña the title shot, like we mentioned, was the submission win over Sarah McMahon. Now, look, finishes will get you title shots. We know this, right? I mean, time and time again, you see fighters, it's either a notable opponent or you get a finish. That's usually what gets you there. But there's a history of Sarah McMahon being submitted. And I don't want to downplay necessarily what Peña did, but if you look at it here, there's a theme. Sarah McMahon, submitted by Julianna Peña, submitted by Marion Renault, submitted by Caitlin Vieira, submitted by Amanda Nunes. Like, we're seeing a theme here with Sarah McMahon, in that it seems that, McMahon, if she can't out wrestle you, she tends to get submitted. So while it's a good name to have, McMahon's a former title challenger, I don't put that much stock into that win, just because we've seen Sarah McMahon beat there. There's a catalyst on how to beat Sarah McMahon in terms of that. Now, the fight before that, she fought Jermaine Durandamy, good step up. Got submitted in the 3rd round. It was a pretty good win there for Jermaine. I do need to go back and watch that, but I feel like Jermaine was in control of most of the fight. And then the fight before that, she got the win over Nico Montano, who again sort of just disappeared since winning the flyweight titles. So I don't really know how much stock you can put in that. It's kind of a weird scenario because, you know, the wins that Peña has are not great, but then her losses are against the top-notch fighters, right? She got submitted by Valentina Shevchenko. Now, she does have a win over Kat Zingano. That's a good win. But, you know, again, Zingano, I think, had a lengthy layoff coming back into that fight. It was actually at that fight. That was UFC 200. She beat Jessica Ai, who's not in the weight class anymore. And then you've got Milana Dudeva and then Rakosi at the finale. So think about this, John. Here's another thing with Peña. And granted, you know, she did become a mom. She took some time off. I know she had some injuries. But since winning the Ultimate Fighter in 2013, Peña has only fought 7 times. Since 2007, the beginning of 2017, Peña has only fought 3 times. That's not a lot of activity. And I think that is something to kind of take pause at when looking at Peña and her run overall, you know, in her career, you know, where Nunes has been a lot more active. And Nunes has had some gaps, but not anything close. Like if you look at it since 2017, Nunes has fought 6 times. She's fought 6 times since Peña took her break in 2017. So it's been pretty crazy in terms of the activity level. Should mention quickly, Peña beat Gina Mazzani. We forget about this, right? That was a tough 18. So Peña beat Gina Mazzani, Shayna Baszler, Sarah Morris, and then Jessica Rakosi in the final. Rakosi was 1-3 at the time. Her boxing is sort of what got her into the finals of the Ultimate Fighter. I know Rakosi because she's Canadian, so I always sort of keep a footnote on that. But yeah, so Peña, I think one of the things that we can look forward to in this fight is that Peña will definitely sell the fight. She can talk some trash. She's obviously very marketable in that regard. So, you know, from that perspective, I'm not that disappointed we're getting this fight. It's not like we're getting someone who's super respectful and there's going to be no trash talk or whatever. At least we'll get that part of it. But your thoughts on Julianna Peña as a fighter?
Peña, yeah, you pointed it out beautifully about the inactivity. You know what I mean? The inactivity is something that really is a glaring con in her, you know, in just looking at her, right? And then you look at like her best win. I think her best performance was pretty much against Kat Zingano, right? Because Kat Zingano at that moment, she was like a world beater, right? That's the time when she was beating everybody pretty much. And Julianna Peña beat her in a decision unanimously. I got to go back and watch that again, but it seemed like that she, you know, won the rounds pretty clearly. Now, other than that, I don't know. Like you said, Nico Montano, she hasn't fought in, I don't even remember the last time she fought. I don't even remember who she fought in the last.
And she's at bantamweight now too. Well, I guess no. Yeah, that fight would have been at bantamweight anyways against Peña.
But you know, she was the flyweight champion, and then the Sarah McMahon fight, the last fight she had, I watched that right before we came on, and the first 2 rounds, Sarah McMahon was dominating the fight. Dominating, had her back. You know, Peña was throwing up submissions, but you know, McMahon got out of them. I think McMahon, the reason she was submitted in the 3rd round is because she just gassed and she just couldn't, you know, get out of the scrambles quick enough to where, you know, Peña got her back and choked her out. So if McMahon would have like rode out that round, she would have won that fight by decision, right? But Peña, props to her. She went in there with some urgency, got the finish, and then went on her rampage with the interviews and everything and got herself a title shot. Hey, I can't blame her for that though. You know what I mean? No, like if you could get a title shot, get the championship pay, get the sponsors to hop on, all of that stuff is great for her, man. I love what she did. Another thing is the 2 losses that she does have are against strikers, but by submission, which is completely weird. Yeah, that is just odd to me, right? Like, how do you go in there against strikers, like elite level strikers like Durandame and Shevchenko, and get submitted by them? It just baffles my mind to the point it's like, I got to think about this fight, right? To see like, how is this fight going to play out? Because is Julia Peña going to go to the ground with, you know, Amanda Nunes, or are they going to stand up and, you know, bang with each other? Because Peña, if you look at her striking, she is a type of fighter that will just walk you down and then just punch you, and even like get hit to, you know, land a shot, right? So there's a lot of dynamics here, but with Peña, she is a major underdog heading into this fight, but she does have her ways to victory. She does have paths to victory.
Yeah, and there's nothing to lose. We always talk about this when there's a big odds thing. I mean, Peña really has nothing to lose here. I mean, even if she loses this fight, how much longer is Nunes going to be champion? I think she's looking, you know, towards the future, maybe getting out of fighting. I mean, there's a possibility that Peña could go out there and get another title shot, even if she loses this fight, right? So I think, you know, the urgency, Nunes is fighting for her legacy, essentially. Like, she's got to keep winning these fights to sort of can be considered the GOAT, right? If she loses to Peña, that's going to be a black eye, the same way that people look at Ronda Rousey now and say, oh, well, she was never that good, right? Like, not that I think people would do that with Nunes, but you sort of get what I'm saying here. You lose one fight, everyone's very quick to turn on you, it seems. So there's that. A couple things you mentioned there. The Zingano fight that you mentioned, she actually was coming off the loss to Ronda Rousey, where she got submitted in 14 seconds. So, but prior to that, she was undefeated. So you're right. That was a good win at the time. She fought Peña almost a year later. It was more than a year later. So she lost to Ronda Rousey in February of 2015. She ended up fighting Peña in July of 2016. So it took a lot of time off from that. So again, it's one of those things you have to kind of just, whatever, we'll see what happens. And then in terms of her stand-up, so I was looking at it here. Peña has not finished an opponent by knockout since 2015. So it's one of the things to keep in mind. I don't know if she'll go that. I mean, I would think if you're going to beat Amanda Nunes, you would try and get her to the ground, because we just know how much power she has. Like, it's just a dangerous game to play. The only fighters that have stood toe-to-toe with, or have tried to stand toe-to-toe with Nunes are Durandamy and Shevchenko. They're both good strikers. That's the difference. So they're really high-level strikers. So they felt comfortable going there in terms of doing that. And what did they both have in common in those fights? They both went the distance, right? So if I'm Peña, I'm probably thinking about getting this to the ground. That's something I would sort of look at if I was to do that. Easier said than done, though. Plenty of fighters have tried to do that, but yeah, I think this fight, I think the odds are right where they need to be. Keep an eye on the odds as well. I'll mention this to people. If you are looking to bet Amanda Nunes, I would get on that now, because the line's only going to go up. Usually they'll announce a fight and then people sort of forget about it. And then you see the odds come in on certain fights. Like, we'll talk about it maybe a bit later. We got the UFC 262 card at the time of recording this. Like, Leon Edwards is now like a minus 590 favorite. Like, I remember earlier he was I think he was like maybe minus 400 or something. So you do see the line get hit a little bit. So keep that in mind if you like Nunes. Personally, I mean, well, spoiler alert, we'll get to our pick here. I'm going to Amanda Nunes. I find it very hard to believe that Julianna Peña is going to win this fight. Anything's possible in a fight, but again, Peña's not a better striker. I don't even think she's a better ground specialist than Amanda Nunes is. And Nunes is just at the top of her game right now. She's catching Nunes at the worst time. Nunes is beating everyone. There's two things I do want to point out that I think could play into Peña's favor. Number one, like I said, is the mentality of Nunes. Is she thinking of retirement? Is that going to kind of cloud her in this fight? And the fact she has to make bantamweight. She does cut a lot of weight. Remember the last time she made it against Durandamy? It was a tough cut. She has plenty of time to cut weight. You hope that that's something she's, really, not, I hate to say taking seriously, but you know what I mean? Like, really putting in the effort to make the weight. So that is one thing, because Peña has always fought at 135. She's never had problems making 135. So keep that in mind as well when you're looking at the matchup. Maybe look at the weigh-ins as well. But that's outside of that. This is Nunes all day. I would look at the Nunes inside the distance prop if you can get it. I wouldn't even take knockout or submission, because I don't know how it's going to end. Maybe Nunes is looking at the Shevchenko and Durandamy fights and going, it's easier to submit her than knock her out, right? In fact, as Peña, I don't think has ever been knocked out. No, she hasn't. So that's something to keep in mind as well, that maybe submission. I would look at either the submission prop or the inside the distance prop if you're going that route to bet Nunes, but I'm going Nunes here. Any surprises? Who are you picking in this one?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. And like you just said, Amanda Nunes hasn't made 135 since December 2019. That's a long time ago, right? And and she just recently had a child too. She's become a mother recently. So, she might have, sat back and relaxed a little bit after that Megan Anderson fight got a little big. Who knows, what's going on. She just recently did an interview, I think, with MMA Junkie. She seemed like she's in shape. She's training and everything. Man, I would love to go against you, James. I would love to go against you. But this one, it's like, I cannot go against you. You know what I mean? Like, Amanda Nunes, how could you pick against her? It's like, to me, it's like Alex Volkanovski. I'm not going to pick against him until he loses. I think like stylistically, he can beat everybody in the featherweight division. And I always pick him. So even if we preview Brian Ortega, you already know who I'm going to pick. Just like Amanda Nunes. Every time she fights, I'm going to pick her until she loses. Julianna Peña, her path to victory, in my opinion, will be to take her down. But Amanda Nunes has good wrestling. Yeah. I wouldn't be blown away if Amanda Nunes went in there and started to wrestle with Peña early on and try to take her to the ground. Because, what we saw with GDR and we saw with Shevchenko, them submitting her. Amanda Nunes is like, okay, I need to get this fight over with. And we saw the history. I love history. All her finishes in the last 8 fights are in the first round, submission or KO. So I'm picking Nunes, first round submission. I think that's what's going to happen. I think she's going to go in there and I think she's up to the point where she's out there to prove something rather than just defend the belt. And it's like legacy, right? So if she can go in there and out wrestle the wrestler, it's kind of like that John Jones thing, you know what I mean? Out wrestle the wrestler and go in there and submit the submission artist. I think she's going to do it. Amanda Nunes, first round submission. I'm I'm going to even tell you the submission. I think it's going to be a rear naked choke. I think that's what she's going to do. She's going to take the back. And Peña has given her back before. You know who had her back? McMahon a few times in that fight.
Good call.
She just couldn't lock up the submission. So I think Amanda's jiu-jitsu is way better. You know what I mean? She has so much more experience. If you look at it, she has 10 more fights as a professional compared to Peña. Peña has been inactive. And who is Peña's training with, too? Like, is she in Chicago?
That's one thing I was going to bring up before we got out of this. It's a key thing that we forgot to mention here. So Peña is training in Chicago at Valley Flow Striking. I know she's also been doing some training. She does Rick Little, her coach from Sick Jitsu, same coach as Michael Chiesa, also comes out and works with her as well. That's not a camp really known for. I know Bilal Muhammad's trained a bit there. Macy Barber trains there. Rodriguez trains there as well. But Amanda trains at American Top Team. You're getting to work with everyone. Yoani and Jacek. You've got,
Kayla Harrison.
Yeah, Kayla Harrison. I mean, come on. You've got the best of the best over there. I mean, that's a super camp over there. So yeah, that's one other sort of caveat I want to mention that does favor Nunes as well. I mean, if it was the other way around, maybe that's something you could look at with Peña, but Nunes is at the best camp ever in terms of ATT as well. A couple things we'll mention before we move on to questions, if you guys have any. First, Mike, our producer, wanted to remind us that we do have a line movement tool with the app. It's visible for every fight. So, like, for example, the Saturday for UFC 263, you can see how the odds have shifted. So check that out as well. Again, we always mention this here. This is why we do the early previews as well. We want to give you some insight. So if you guys are looking to bet the fights, you're looking to pick the fights, you get some early insight. And especially when it comes to the lines, maybe you'll get a good line on certain things. We just had this, Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul fight book last week. Jake Paul's the favorite. If you like Woodley, now's a good time to get on him, right? Because he's underdog money. Maybe that line flips come fight time. Maybe some footage comes out, sways your judgment. I'm not sure, but just something to keep in mind as well. And also, we got some breaking news, and this is why we got the best producer in the business, Mike. Anthony Pettis out of his fight tomorrow against Alex Martinez for the PFL, which we will talk a bit of PFL here today as well. So our buddy Marcel, can't say enough good things about our buddy Big Marcel, saying that he is out of the fight due to illness. Natan Schulte will fight Alex Martinez. Natan Schulte, also a client of Ali Abdelaziz, come on, he's fighting Alex Martinez, who, I love Alex. He's undefeated. I think you could have possibly give that win to his opponent in his last fight. They know what they're doing here. They're giving Schulte a bounce back fight. Is it any coincidence that this is happening? I don't think so. That's all I'm going to say on that. Not to dig too much deep into this, but I do find it interesting that Schulte, of all opponents, guy who lost decisively in his last fight, former tournament winner, is getting arguably one of the easiest fights in the PFL. So that's my thoughts on everything there. All right. We don't have any questions yet. Just keep the questions coming. We will get to them when we see them. So much to get into. Let's stick with the PFL since we talked about it there, John. PFL's fourth event going down. A couple fights I wanted to talk about here. Let's get into the prelim fight between Marcin Held and Olivier Aubin-Mercier. I talked to Olivier before the fight. The big thing that stood out to me, and this is something that I think people should be looking at if you're looking to pick this fight, is that Olivier has not had a very good camp, right? Like, he did spend a bit of time, I think he was telling me, I think it was in Puerto Rico. He got to work with John Danaher down there a bit, which is good. But in general, the training situation in Montreal, not very good. TriStar, as far as I know, not business as usual. So there's a lot of sort of in-home training. That's not looking good for a guy who was in fought in July of 2019. Marcin Held, on the other hand, coming off, in my opinion, one of the biggest wins of his career. The thing that I like the most about Marcin Held in that last fight was that he outstruck Natan Schulte. Like, he beat Schulte at his own game, right? If you thought Held was going to win that fight, you probably thought, using his ground game. But this guy's now become a complete fighter, and he's younger. I really like Held in this fight. I don't know if we have odds for that on here. Yeah, we do. So Held is minus 150. That is a steal, in my opinion. Honestly, I really like Held in this fight. And look, as a Canadian picking against a Canadian, you should take that for what it's worth too. But I really like Marcin Held in this fight. I think he should be one of the, considered one of the favorites after what he did in that last fight. What do you think about that, John?
Yeah, Marcin Held, he surprised everybody in that performance against Natan Schulte. Yeah, he went in there, improved striking. They didn't even go to the ground, barely any. And Olivier, man, I thought, I was early picks. I picked him. You know why? Is because I think that he has the ability to go to the ground and stay out of submissions against Marcin Held. I think he's good enough. But now that you tell me his training situation, I didn't know that. I'm going to have to flip my pick to Marcin Held now, because Marcin Held, man, I think we're seeing the best version of Marcin Held right now. You know what I mean? Like, his skill set maybe is rounding out at the perfect moment, especially with this tournament going on. And the division, the lightweight division, is so unstable, especially with the champ losing his first fight and Marcin Held beating him. he's probably one of the favorites now, right? Moving forward, to go to the finals. Marcin Held, if he could get it past Olivier, I think he is, man. So I'm gonna switch my pick. I'm gonna take Marcin Held in this fight, man.
There you go. I swayed you. That's the main thing. And to think I'm going against a fellow countryman here in Olivier. The other thing I wanted to mention with Olivier as well is that, granted, his last 2 losses are against top-notch guys, Gilbert Burns and Saryukin. Saryukin looks like the real deal at lightweight as well. But it's the layoff. And then here's the thing we forget about Marcin Held. He's one of the few fighters that left the UFC off a win. Right? Like he beat Nasrat Haqparast in the fight before, and then he went to ACA and he's racked up a bunch of wins as well. So this guy at, how old is he? 29. He's in the prime of his career right now. He looks like a serious threat. And honestly, I'm surprised the line's that low. I think that's a steal getting him at -150. So I might even have to play some action on that. The other fight I wanted to talk about here. So hold on. I'm just trying to figure this out as well. So poor Rash Manifo, he was supposed to fight Schulte. So I guess he doesn't have an opponent now, and they've moved Schulte to the Martinez fight by the looks of it. Schulte will absolutely beat Martinez. I imagine the line's going to be pretty heavy on that. The other fight I wanted to mention as well, Brendan Loughnane and Tyler Diamond. I really like Brendan Loughnane in that fight. I think he's another guy you got to look at in that division as a killer. To me, what Brendan's doing is he's going out there and he's making statements. He's finishing opponents. Shayman Moraes, picture perfect, fight in terms of knocking him out very early. So that was another fight I look at as well. Diamond's good. He's a solid fighter, but I feel like he doesn't give me that extra, like where you're like, man, this guy could do something special. Like he's a solid fighter, got a good win in his last fight, but he's not like Loughnane where he's really blowing my socks off, so to speak, in terms of his performances. I think Loughnane, and I asked him this in the interview, I said, do you feel like you can, finish Tyler Diamond? Because Diamond, I don't believe he hasn't been finished in his career. He feels like he can. I think it's possible, but I think more likely than not, Loughnane is going to win this fight. -305, the odds makers agree as well. So your thoughts?
How are you going to pick against the mullet, James? Come on. The mullet is like an extra.
Mullet's been not doing so great lately. Tanner Boser lost on the weekend, right? Like there's, so we'll see. I love Tyler Diamond, though. Great interview. Love that guy. And I'd love to see him pull off the upset here. But I think Loughnane is just, and I think there's a bit of a chip on his shoulder too with him not getting picked to the UFC. And I'll tell you the backstory to that. I know the real reason why he wasn't signed to the UFC. I'll tell you that off air, John. Can't mention it on air. It's one of those behind the scene things. But it's I think he was ready to take that $1 million and kind of throw it in the UFC's face for not picking him. So
with Tyler Diamond, I think that's the glaring difference between him and Brandon, is that Tyler Diamond goes in there, he does enough to win, but Brandon's got that excitement factor, that killer instinct, more I don't know if more than Tyler Diamond does. You know what I mean? Like when you see him perform, Brandon's out there, like you said, with the chip on his shoulder, ready to excite people with his performances. Tyler is there to win. But this tournament is all about just winning, though. You know what I mean? And Tyler Diamond can go in there and put Brandon on his back and grind him out if he needs to, right? Neutralize that striking, because you know what Brandon wants to do. He wants to go in there and knock your head off. So I still give Tyler Diamond a big chance in this fight, but I'm going to make my pick against Brendan Loughnane. If you see on the screen, my pick is already made for Brendan. So
there you go. I got to get my picks in. I know I was, listen, I'm going to write this on my phone. And the thing is, like, I do check the app a lot. I just forget to actually put my picks in. So I'm going to put picks right here on my phone. So I'll get those in. I'll get Bellator in as well. We'll talk a little bit about that as well, too. Before we continue on with this PFL card, let's get a couple questions in the chat here. We got James in the chat saying the Nick Diaz return rumors are growing stronger. Do you guys believe in any of them? No. I'll tell you why. Because we've been hearing Nick Diaz return rumors for like 5 years. This is like the GSP, is he going to come back fight sort of talk, in my opinion, until we see something. No, not even until we see something signed. Until we see Nick Diaz actually step in the cage, then I'll believe it. Because this is like it's like the, I don't know what I'd even describe it. It's just like it keeps coming up. I know Dana's like, oh, things are looking good. Well, we heard that he was supposed to fight Masvidal, 2 years ago, right? And that didn't happen. I've always said this: if Nick Diaz comes back, you do the Robbie Lawler rematch. If you haven't seen that first fight between the two of them, one of the best fights of all time. Commentary was so biased towards Lawler in that fight, and then Nick Diaz knocked out Lawler. It was great. Love that fight. That was vintage Nick Diaz back then. And I just don't make much of it until it actually happens.
Yeah, I don't believe any of the Nate Diaz or Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz is fighting this weekend, but I don't believe any of the Nick Diaz stuff, man. It's just Dana. Remember, he said, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna meet with Nick Diaz in the back. We're gonna talk." And then after they talked, he's like, "Oh, Nick Diaz doesn't want to come back." And now all of a sudden, he's flipping and flopping. And also, whatchamacallit? He flipped and flopped on Robert Whittaker just today and yesterday. Like another interview, he said Robert Whittaker doesn't want to fight. He's not the next guy. And then he does another interview and says Robert Whittaker is definitely the next guy. So I can't believe any rumors, man. Sometimes I think they just throw rumors out there just to keep themselves relevant, and they're really not wanting to come back and fight. Like I don't know, man. Like I'm until they have like a contract signed, I don't believe anything that they say about these fighters coming back. It's like saying GSP is going to come back. So,
exactly. That's exactly why I brought that up. We'll get 2 more questions here, and then we'll get back to the PFL talk. Sasha says, Conor McGregor hasn't even started his camp yet. He's chilling in the Middle East. He's done. People still think he can beat Poirier. To his credit, I know he is training down there. He had a photo with some Indian heavyweight champion that he was working with down there. So I think he is training. He's just doing his camp down there. But I've said this before, John. We already did the preview of the fight. He's got to switch things up. Like, go and do a camp where you're by yourself and you have different coaches and you're getting like really gritty training. Like in the Middle East with nice weather and probably, gold sheets, you're probably not getting the best training. I would just like to see him switch things up. And my pick is still not changed. I'm taking Poirier. I have to. Poirier is at the best gym, one of the best gyms in the world at ATT. He's got the best coaches. He's being pushed. He's away from home, right? I know Florida's nice, but Poirier's not chilling at the beach. He's in there every day, putting the work in. Whereas McGregor, who knows what he's doing? So yeah, I disagree with your comment about him not starting his camp. I believe he has, but he's got to just make it a gritty camp, and it doesn't seem like that's what's happening.
Yeah, I heard he flew his coaches to the Middle East though, like John Kavanaugh and his striking coach Roddy something, right? And it's just you have your coaches. That's something that you always will have. But who are you training with? Like what are the bodies that you're using to get ready for Poirier, right? Like would you just picking random people at the shopping mall and then bringing them back to your mansion and training with them? I don't know what you're doing, man. Like that is the mystery. And like you said, we talked about this. I'm not going to pick McGregor to win the third fight. I'm picking Poirier, and that's it, man. I don't think anything's going to change from the time right now to the time that they fight. That's going to make me switch to McGregor. I have no idea. I don't think he's going to change anything.
And by the way, I got a lot of heat from YouTube because when I interviewed Eddie Alvarez a couple months ago, we were talking about the whole Conor thing, and they had, obviously was going to do the trilogy. And I asked Eddie, I said, would you ever train with Conor? And people are like, why would he train with the guy that he destroyed? Well, here's why: because he fought Poirier twice. And yes, I know he lost to Poirier the second time, but like you can learn some things from every fighter. Like people don't seem to understand that. It's like just because you beat a fighter doesn't mean they have something not to offer. It's no different than like St. Pierre training with Dan Hardy, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like, so that was sort of, I just wanted to bring that up because I got a lot of heat for that. I'm like, that's why I asked him, because it's like, think about this. If Conor McGregor went to Philadelphia, which is cold as hell, earlier in the year, you go there, you live in Alvarez's basement or something, and you're doing like some gritty training there with Sean Brady and guys that don't give a crap if you're Conor McGregor. That's the type of training he needs. That's all I was getting at. I think he needs to do something like that. Like literally that would be a Rocky training camp for him, right? Philly and everything.
Yeah, I think that actually could be a possibility because it's not like they have like this animosity between each other. Like
well,
McGregor
actually, so Alvarez's answer was no. I wouldn't train with him. Oh, okay. I think because it's gotten personal, but still, that's why I asked him that. And people are like, "What an idiot! Why would you ask him?" It's like because there's something you can teach him something. He's fought Poirier a couple times. Like you can always learn something from every opponent. So that's why I brought it up. People are very casual when it comes to that response. Last thing we'll mention, then we'll get on to the rest of the stuff. What's up? If Marvin beats Izzy, will they book the trilogy or does Whittaker get the next shot? I don't think there's any way they do a trilogy outside of a complete robbery of a fight, which I don't see that happening either. I think Izzy's going to win. We already previewed the fight. I think if I had to put that percentage, I'd put it at 5%.
But if Marvin wins, what is the next fight though?
Any one of the booked fights you could do. It won't be. That's the interesting thing. Imagine if Marvin wins and then Calvin beats Cannonier. They're not going to fight. They're teammates. So you could do. Speaking of which, our pals over at Submission Radio did a great interview with Jared Cannonier. Man, they're on fire this week. They got Dana White, they got Cannonier, they got Hooker, and they got Jan Blachowicz all in the span of a week. So people are wondering if there's going to be a void at ESPN if Ariel leaves and doesn't do interviews. Submission Radio's got you covered. Shout out to those guys. But
why don't they pick up those guys? Like
I said that. Listen, I said this when MMA Fighting got rid of the MMA hour, and Mike's done a great job with what the heck. Like that's been a good void to fill with his show. But I said right when Ariel left and they tried to make Luke Thomas the host, they should have just picked up Submission Radio. That would have made way more sense and do it as a pre-recorded show. That was the solution to that. But anyways, it all worked out. No, I think so. There's that fight, and then you've got Till and Brunson as well. So they'll figure out something there. All those are high-level matchups. I'm sure one of them will determine the next winner, but I don't think there'll be a trilogy. I think even if Marvin beats Izzy, I don't think they'll do a rematch right away.
I think Marvin doesn't even give Izzy a rematch. That's the thing.
That too. Yeah.
I think he'll be like, no, I don't want to fight him again. Like that, he doesn't deserve it. Like I'll move on and beat everybody else. It's gonna be a weird situation. But yeah, like you said, we both picked Izzy to win that fight, so we're not expecting that to happen.
Okay, keep the questions coming. We'll get back to that in a sec. Let's go through the rest of the PFL card. Bubba Jenkins, Bobby Moffett. Love seeing Bobby get a shot here. I think you've interviewed Bobby a few times. Really great guy, the Wolfman. He's at Fight Ready, so he's getting some good wrestling training there. I'm sure he's working a bit with Captain Eric, who obviously has Cejudo and those guys. But I think Bubba Jenkins is probably going to wrestle Bobby Moffett in that fight. What he did to Lance Palmer, completely blown away. By the way, look at the hair of Bobby Moffett, man. He really is looking like the Wolfman now. It's he's really growing into that a little bit. But yeah, you see the odds there, minus 240. I would take the Bubba Jenkins by decision prop if you can find that. I think more likely than not, he just wins the decision there. So
yeah, Bobby looking like a young Jay Fox, right? Like in Teen Wolf.
Exact. Great reference. By the way, it's Michael J. Fox's birthday today. It's interesting you mentioned.
Oh, is he, man? Shout out to Michael J. Fox, man. Yeah. Anyways, Bobby Moffett, he hasn't fought in so long though.
Yeah, not since the UFC. Since he lost to, who did he lose in the UFC to? It was Barzola. It was a split decision.
Yeah, so it's been so long since we've seen him compete, but he's been training because I know he was out in Korea helping the Korean Zombie get ready for Brian Ortega. And then he went back because he was going to fight on a show. I forgot what show it was. Was it Aries or one of the other shows?
Yeah, it was one of the,
and it got canceled, right? So he's been training.
He's supposed to fight Henan Barao at Tara MMA.
That's right.
Back in November of last year.
And it got canceled. But so he's been training. I'm pretty sure he's been a body for a lot of guys, getting ready for fights. And he's probably been training with the Korean Zombie right now, you know what I mean? Or the last couple of weeks because, he's over there training too. But like you said, man, Bubba Jenkins, he can wrestle and he is really good at MMA wrestling. And he's got great IQ in the cage. And he might not be like the world beater where he takes you down and beats your head in, but man, he can control you. And that's what he did to Lance Palmer. So I see the same thing happening, especially with that long layoff.
And then we'll just mention, so the Pettis fight's out. It's Schulte and Martinez. We both like Schulte in that fight, I'm assuming. The main event, obviously, Clarissa Shields making her MMA debut against Brittany Elkin. Just want to point out the optics of this. Elkin retired. So Elkin broke her arm against Bobby Joe, the Canadian girl. She lost to her on the regional scene. Broke her arm, called it a career, and was just doing grappling fights. PFL called her, said, hey, do you want to fight Clarissa Shields? So here we are. I know Elkin's been working with Zach Makovsky, who's a pretty good ground specialist out there in Philly as well. You look at the odds here, Clarissa Shields minus 260. I think this is all we're going to look for on Thursday is can she stop the takedown? She's training with Holly Holmes. She's training with a lot of good. I mean, she's at the best camp to be at in terms of, training MMA. So she's got that going for her. But I like Shields here. I think the PFL knows what they're doing here. I think they've looked at Elkin, and you've seen Elkin. She got destroyed by Kayla Harrison. She's got destroyed by a lot of other fighters. She has a losing record here. This is the type of opponent you're supposed to fight, but I think Shields goes out there. Here's the thing with Shields as well that we need to talk about is that she's still very young. Like, she's coming into MMA at a time where she's still competing at a very high level. Like, you could even argue when Holm came in that she was someone that was a little bit older coming in. I mean, if you look at Shields, like I said, very active, still very young, undefeated. Outside of like Elkin taking this to the ground and submitting her, I think this is Shields' fight all day. So I'm going to take her in this one.
I didn't even know who Clarissa Shields was until she started talking about going to MMA. I'm going to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Okay. I'm not that big of a boxing fan either. And, and I follow the men rarely and the females barely. Right. So Clarissa Shields, there's a lot of people talking about her. She was down at, Jackson Wink, which I've heard so much about that camp where it's like, if you're a big star, they treat you really well. So she's a big star and they probably treat her really well and got her some great training partners. But man, if this goes to the ground, I'm just wondering if she can defend well. And also the cage too. Is she able to be elusive in the cage? Because if I'm Brittany, I'm going to be chasing her around the cage, trying to grab her, get an arm, get an underhook, something, just to latch on, pull guard. And if she does that, I think that Brittany Elkin submits her. I think it's going to be fast.
And like we mentioned with the Peña and Nunes fight, Elkin's got nothing to lose, right? Like that's dangerous. There's all the pressure on here. I just point to a situation like we had with Aaron Pico and Zach Freeman. Zach Freeman came in there and says, I don't give a crap if you guys think this is the next, big champion or huge prospect here. I'm a veteran. I fought Thiago Moises. I fought lots of good guys, leading up to this. I'm going to go out there and prove you wrong. And that's exactly what happened. And granted, Pico's very young when he made his Bellator debut as well. I think he was 20. So a little bit different. And Shields has fought in big, high pressure situations. It's not like Shields actually has combat sports experiences as far as being a boxer. Pico had none of that. He was a wrestler. But you get what I'm saying there, that like sometimes the pressure can get to people. But yeah, I would feel pretty confident about picking Shields. Am I going to bet this fight? Absolutely not. I still need to see how she looks. I have no idea how she looks. I can't judge things off of Instagram videos and all these other things. So I'm going to stay away from this one. I'll just sit back and eat my popcorn and sort of take this one in. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now in terms of just enjoying this fight. Which, by the way, if you guys are watching the PFL, sorry to interrupt you. PFL, go to their Twitter account while you're watching the fights. You'll see me interviewing fighters in between the fights on the main card on Thursday, tomorrow night. So make sure you tune in for that. PFL MMA on Twitter. I'll be there hosting and doing some interviews. So hopefully you can join me there tomorrow night.
Man, I wish you could get Marcel and Lynch. That would be the dream interview.
I've asked. I mean, we have the same last name. We work for the same company. I would think there's some connection there that we could do.
Seahawks connection.
Seahawks connection. I have a Marshawn Lynch jersey at home. My son does too. So I'd love to get an interview with him. I was supposed to interview him, I think, when they first made the announcement, but then it was I think it was draft week or something, or Super Bowl week. I can't remember what. Oh no, it would have been draft week. Super Bowl's in January. But so I wasn't able to get him, but maybe down the line we'll see.
For sure. Well, I'm picking Elkins. I think Elkins going to go in there and upset Shields. I think she's going to be able to get her to the ground and do something. Leg locks, right? How much has Shields been defending leg locks? You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. You know what I mean? Elkins been, like you mentioned earlier, she has Zach Makovsky training her, right? Day in and day out. So I see that happen. I think Elkins can go in there and do it. I think she's going to get the upset. And one thing interesting about her, she's only thinking about this fight. It's like she came back for this fight. She doesn't even think she's going to fight again after this, right? Maybe if she wins, but if she loses, she's like, all right, maybe I'm not, made for this anymore. So we'll see what happens with that.
Let's get to what else we have. Do we have any other questions in the chat here that we can get to? Let's get to, I don't want to pronounce the guy's name, but it says, hypothetically speaking, does Wonder Boy manage to get away from Usman's takedowns with his long range and fast speed and takedown defense and pick him apart for the decision? That's an interesting fight. I think that is definitely the most different. My English is terrible today. That is definitely a unique matchup for Usman because he's never fought a karate guy before and someone that has the striking prowess of Stephen Thompson. The problem with Thompson, unfortunately, he's 38. Like at some point that's got to slow you down. We'll find out in the Burns fight if that's going to be the case. I don't think it will be, but I think Thompson has the ability to beat Usman. I do. As good as Usman's looked, it's very easy to look good against a guy like Masvidal, who, by the way, Thompson beat. So I mean, it's one of those things where I think the style matchup will be interesting. It really depends if Usman can get those takedowns and utilize his wrestling. That's really what it comes down to. So
yeah, I love that fight. I want to see it so bad, but you know what? Colby's gonna fight Usman next. Is that real?
Again, nothing signed yet, John. Nothing.
Well, Colby said he signed.
I know, and then I know, but we'll see. And then who's Usman's manager who doesn't like Colby as well? Like, there's a lot at play here, and I think there's a reason they're not signing anything right now because they want to see if Nate Diaz can pull off this upset. If he does, then that's Usman's biggest not biggest, but one of his biggest paydays and one of his easiest fights. Like, it's a stylistic nightmare.
A piece of me wants Nate Diaz to win, so
I don't, because I like Leon so much, man. Like, I really like Leon has gotten it's gotten such a bad shake over the last couple of years, right? Unbeaten streak. Then he fights Bilal, has the eye poke. Fans hate him because of that. Now he's fighting Diaz. Like, I just want to see Leon break through and get an opportunity because I think
of course.
That's where I'm coming from because I do like Leon a lot. Obviously, I'm trying not to be biased, but yeah, if Diaz wins, of course, there's the parody side of me that's like, yeah, that would be pretty crazy. So.
You know what would be crazier than that if he does go in there and beats Edwards, right, and then goes on and beats Usman and becomes the champ. That would just I don't even know, man. That would be just the most incredible story of all time with Nate Diaz, a guy that I think like he's not even an elite fighter anymore, but if he goes in there and does that, he proves everybody wrong. But yeah, so hopefully, Leon does go in there and get the job done, and they give Leon the title shot. I think that's most deserved right there.
A couple more questions here, and then we'll flip over to Bellator. Do you guys think Oliveira first Ferguson was a passing of the torch moment? That comes from Roman. Kind of, but like also I think Ferguson's age and his, just his injuries and stuff has caught up to him. It happens to everyone. He could have fought Oliveira, fought someone else. It's no different. Like I think we saw against Dariush that the old Ferguson's gone, and you know, it happens to a lot of fighters where they can't compete at a high level anymore. And I think I almost don't want to say passing the torch because I think Oliveira is that good. I almost think it's disrespectful to him to say that it's like I think that Oliveira was good even before that. So because I think the Kevin Lee fight really showed us that he's a contender. So I'm sort of in the middle on that. I don't know what you think.
With Ferguson, I think we gotta wait until his next fight, his next performance, to see if he's like washed, right? Like he's done at the elite level. They're gonna give him somebody in that 10 to 15 range, I think. And if he can't get past that guy, like, you know, phenomenally, I don't know where Ferguson goes from there. You know what I mean? At the top of that division, maybe he's just going to fight. He's just going to do a Matt Brown. He's just going to stick around and fight just anybody that's willing to fight him. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. I think that could be a possibility. So I don't think we know yet if he's passed the torch or anything. We have to wait until the next performance.
Two quick things on that. If they want to go the veteran route with Ferguson, I've always said this, do the Cowboy Cerrone rematch. If they don't want to go the veteran route, here's a kind of an interesting fight. Alex Hernandez. That'd be kind of interesting for Ferguson. Yeah. Guy who's been a little bit disappointing, right? He's coming off a loss. He can talk some trash. He would build up the fight really well. We'll see. I mean, I think that would be that's an interesting fight. If they wanted to go the prospect route, not that even Hernandez necessarily is a prospect, but he's
sort of an up-and-comer. Better than that? It'd be Rafael Fiziev.
Fiziev would destroy him. I think we all know that.
I know, but it'd give him a chance to prove that, you know what I mean? He's still
you can't do Tony dirty like that. Come on. You can't give him
Fiziev. Really? Like, because I think if you put Alex Hernandez in there with Ferguson, I think Alex Hernandez might be the favorite in that fight.
I think, well, it'd be iffy. I think with Fiziev would be a clear favorite. I think it'd be like a 2 to 3 to 1 favorite in that fight. Okay. Honestly, I think that's how good. Maybe I'm just making more of it of Fiziev.
No, I love Fiziev. I love Fiziev too. You know.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to interview him. He's on the list. I gotta talk to him soon. Okay, let's get to Bellator here quickly, and we'll do that, and then also we'll probably after that as well. We'll get our underdogs picks as well. So we got about 15 minutes left here on the show. I'm not going to go through every fight, but there's a few fights that sort of interested me in terms of Bellator. I'm interested in this. Did you get a chance to talk to Justin Gonzalez? He's making his Bellator debut against Taiwan Claxton at 145. Gonzalez, of course, Contender Series winner, undefeated, taking on Taiwan Claxton. Claxton's lost a few. He's lost 2 of his last 3. Interested in this fight on the prelims with Gonzalez, another guy that the UFC decided to pass on.
Yeah, I didn't talk to Justin Gonzalez. I was supposed to talk to him, but yeah, that is an interesting fight because Taiwan Claxton, he gave up like a 6-figure job to continue his dream or pursue his dream of being an MMA champion. And he's been I think he's been training at Elevation.
Who, Claxton? Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
he's at Elevation,
he's at Elevation with, you know, the killers over there. So this is an interesting fight because Gonzalez, he didn't get signed by the UFC. He's still a top level prospect, and Claxton, it has been somewhat roller coaster in his last couple of fights, right? He's win loss. So yeah, man, I don't know who to pick in this fight, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm picking Gonzalez. Look at, he's plus money. I'm super surprised by that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I'll take him. Money, I know he's a bit older, but you look at the height and reach, height advantage, and he was not reach. Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting fight, but I would take the underdog in that one. I still got to make my pick, as you can see there. Yet to pick. It's staring me right in the eyes. I got to do it. Let's get to, we're going to skip ahead here. Let's get to Aaron Pico and Aiden Lee. You know, I looked at this fight. I'm like, okay, this is kind of like an up-and-comer versus an up-and-comer. But then I realized Aiden Lee doesn't have any knockouts. I think it's by design that he's fighting this guy's 9-4. Aiden Lee, pretty tall for the division. He's 6 feet tall with a 75-inch reach for featherweight, which is pretty big for that weight class. But you look at it here, submission win. He did come off a head kick win in his last fight, but you look at a lot of these wins, they're submission wins. Aaron Pico's not worried about the ground game. He's worried about getting knocked out. I think Pico wins this one. -505. Stay the hell away from that. I recommend no one bet Aaron Pico, at least for another like 3 years, until we can see that he doesn't get knocked out again.
You know what's interesting about him? His head coach is Tom Breeze.
Oh, Aiden Lee, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, having a head coach that's a fighter at the same time, you know, that's always something that, you know, I look at that kind of as a red flag, to be honest with you. Other than James Krause, who has done that well in their career, be a coach, a head coach, and then fight at the highest level? Not many.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. None really coming to mind right now.
So, you know, I don't know. Aiden Lee, he's a good prospect from the UK. Aaron Pico, another good prospect from America. It's America versus the UK. If I was going to go straight up, I'll take Aaron Pico in this fight. I just think Aaron Pico has found his home and found the best mix for him, the best coaches for him. And he feels confident in his coaches. And I think that's the huge factor. And that confidence from his coaches brings it into the cage. And I can see him getting a knockout in this fight.
The other fight we got to talk about, the co-main event. I love this matchup. Paul Daly, Jason Jackson. I'm curious to see the odds on this because I haven't seen them yet. I did a preview of this on my Patreon and I didn't, the odds weren't available yet. So let's bring that up, Mike, whenever you got a chance there. Okay, so Jackson is the favorite. I was wondering about that because a lot of people, I feel like Paul Daly's a little overrated in my books. He had a great last fight against Sabah Hamasi, great performance, nice finish in that one. But I think we forget that Paul Daly is 37, right? Like he's getting up there in age a little bit. He's 38. And he's got a ton of experience and I'll give him that. But Paul Daly has always had the same problem. He can't deal with wrestlers. He always seems to get taken down or taken out of his element and his weapons neutralized. And I think the stand-up, even though he's just coming off a knockout win in his last fight, I don't know if it was what it used to be, so to speak, even though he's coming off back-to-back wins. I feel like this winning streak is a little bit, a little bit kind of inflated a bit just because Eric Silva's been done for a while. Syed Awad's getting up there in age. I love Syed, but that's sort of the truth. And Hamasi's always been kind of hit or miss. But Jason Jackson has looked great. The last fight, though, against Gracie, not a great performance. I'm hoping he'll look a little bit better in that one, but I like Jackson in this fight. I probably won't bet this one either just because of the fact that Jackson didn't look that impressive against Neiman Gracie. He is coming on a 4-fight win streak, lost a split to Ed Ruth. I think that could have gone the other way, but I like Jackson in this fight.
Yeah, I also like Jackson in this fight too because Jackson, he's great at going in there, and as of late, he's been great at going in there and making the adjustments in the fight to win the fight, right? And I think that's what he's going to do against Paul Daly. He's going to be able to evade the big punches, the big swings and misses and stuff like that from Paul Daly, and be able to like piece him up from the outside. I believe he does have a reach advantage, much taller, so I think he's gonna outstrike him, which is gonna be something that's surprising to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Okay, main event. Curious to get your pick on this one. We've got Douglas Lima back defending his welterweight title. Yeah. It's crazy that he won that title over Rory McDonald back in October of 2019. Of course, he fought Mousasi last year. Of course, we had a pandemic as well. He's coming off a loss to Mousasi in a close fight, actually. He looked pretty good in that one. Like, if you look at when Rory fought Gegard and then when Douglas did, Douglas actually held his own, whereas Rory got destroyed in that fight. So Lima looking to bounce back here against the undefeated Amasov, the Ukrainian, who is 27 years old, undefeated, really big win in his last fight over Logan Storley. What this comes down to me, John, is the level of competition. Storley's a great fighter, but you look at who Lima's fought: Mousasi, Rory McDonald twice. The who's who in that division. He's got a finish over Michael Page, beat Koreshkov in the rematch, beat Lorenz Larkin. I like Lima here, but it's like the odds indicate, very close fight. Amasov could pull this off, man. It's one of those fights where it's tough to gauge because Amasov has looked great, but the competition's not there. Maybe he rises to the occasion and gets the win here. He's got great wrestling. This could be a repeat of the Koreshkov and Askren fights. We'll see, but I'm going to take Lima just based off experience here. I think Lima's in the prime of his career right now.
Yeah, Lima's in the prime of his career, and yeah, just off, like you just mentioned, the level of competition and the overall skill set, you got to go with Lima. He's the champ. He's been in that spot so many times. Amasov, there's still a lot of questions for him. If Amasov can go in there and just grind out Lima for 25 minutes and just keep him on his back, because we've seen Lima do that, right? He's been taken down and he just kind of gets comfortable on his back and stays there for long periods of time, thinking that he could just submit somebody, which, at that level, a lot of times you're not going to submit somebody off your back. So if he goes in there, is able to put him on his back, Amasov could grind out the win. But Lima, I feel like he's improved in his wrestling, and man, those calf kicks is going to be a big factor in the early rounds to see if he can land those and kind of throw off Amasov. I'm going to take Lima. I think this is going to go to a decision. I think it's going to be 25 minutes of fighting.
Pull up UFC 263. We do have, we'll do our underdog picks for this fight. I can't remember who I picked last week. I think it was Walt Harris, and he ended up losing, although he was close to winning that as well. It was a back and forth fight in that one. I'm just looking at the odds here. I feel like I did pick an underdog this week, and I can't. Oh, I know who I'm going with. I'm going with Lauren Murphy on this card. Sorry to rush you there, Mike. My bad. Whatchamacallit? It's the Lauren Murphy and Joanne Calderwood fight. It's one of the fights on the prelims here as we're taking a look there. So there you go. Lauren Murphy, lucky Lauren Murphy, is plus 100 right now, or she's plus 130, I should say. She opened at plus 100. I'll tell you why I like her over Joanne Calderwood. To me, it's like this is a 50-50 fight. Calderwood has a lot of advantages. She's younger. She's got a height and reach advantage. She's arguably fought the better competition. But the thing with Murphy is like, she's got this chip on her shoulder, not only from like, the fact that, she hasn't got this title shot, but also the fact that, she switched gyms and, there's some stuff with the media. Remember that whole thing with MMA fighting? Like she's got like a bit of an edge to her now. And I think it's translated well into her fights. Like she's got some really impressive wins. I know her last opponent was a late replacement, but she still finished that fight. She beat Roxanne Modafferi and she beat Andrea Lee before that. Like Murphy is, and she's very good on the ground. Now you look right there at the age 37, that's kind of glaring, but then Calderwood's only 35 herself. So it's not like she's fighting someone that's much younger. The thing that I look at is that Joanne Calderwood's been submitted so many times in her career. Jennifer Maia, Marina Moroz, she's had fights where she's had these lapses. And when you have a 50-50 fight like this, like Murphy's never really had that. She's mainly had close fights, fights that have gone the distance. Murphy's not been finished in a lot of her fights as well. So that's something I sort of look at when I'm looking at the matchup as well. So I see it as 50-50. And to me, if you can get Murphy at plus money in a fight that I think will go the distance, here's two ways I would go with this. I would go with potentially Murphy by submission, or I'd go Murphy by decision as well. If you want to get even better odds, you could just take Murphy straight up. But I think this fight likely does go the decision, but I think Murphy gets it done, man. I like Calderwood. I think she's the better fighter on paper, but I think also the fact that Murphy's been surprising lately, I think will work to her favor. And again, Calderwood had a title shot, right? She fought Maia, thought it was going to be a stay busy fight, and she ended up losing. So for that reason, I think Murphy can pull this one off. What do you think?
Yeah, I picked Murphy to win the fight, but it's a 50. It's such a close fight. And one thing you noticed, Joanne Calderwood didn't do any media leading up to this fight.
Right.
Did you talk to her?
Who Calderwood?
Yeah, Calderwood.
Yeah, she didn't. I was told that she is doing very limited media, so I'm not sure the reason for that.
I was told the same exact thing, right?
Yeah,
so
by
it's
the same
like,
person.
okay. And
Yeah,
usually I talk to her. Like I talked to her before the last fight. So she must be focused, man. She must be thinking that this is the title shot. If she wins this, she's going to go fight for the title and vice versa, right? Laura Murphy is kind of turning into the Leon Edwards of that division for some reason, right? She's like just winning, but she's not getting the title shot. But I think if she beats Joanne Calderwood here, she's probably going to end up fighting Shevchenko. So I agree. I think if you're going to make an underdog pick, Laura Murphy is another good one. Another good one I'm going to go with is Brad Riddell versus Drew Dober. I think Brad Riddell, this is going to be his breakout performance. And I believe he's fighting Drew Dober at the perfect moment, right? Drew Dober, he's an elite fighter, but he's been up and down, right? He's been roller coaster with his career. He cracks the top 15, then he loses and he bounces back out. He cracks the top 15, bounces back out. And I feel like he's just bouncing back too quick. I would like for him to like maybe develop a little bit more outside of like a training camp and then come back and fight somebody like Riddell. But I think Riddell's taking this fight at the perfect time, and he's gonna go in there and probably end up getting a finish, man, over Drew Dober. I think that's what I see.
Dober just lost to Makhachev though, man. Like that's, I don't know. I see where you're going with this. Like Dober's been very inconsistent. The other thing I look at with Dober is just way more UFC or way more just MMA experience. I know Riddell has kickboxing, but Dober's got 33 fights. Riddell's got 10. So we'll see. Could happen as well. Another dog I would sort of take a look at is Darren Stewart. The fact that fight's at 205 actually thinks helps Stewart out a little bit. He mentioned to me in the interview we had was that he had a pretty bad weight cut the last time. So he's one that could surprise, because I know Aaron Anders was dominating that fight, but Stewart's another one I would keep an eye on. And one other fight I want to go to, Mike, and then we'll answer just a few more questions. We're wrapping things up here. Is I want to go to Chase Hooper and Steven Peterson. I want to see if the odds have changed on that, because I know earlier in the week they were even, and I even saw Peterson as a favorite. Peterson is the favorite. Okay, because I do like Peterson in this fight. And the reason I like him is because if you watch Hooper's last fight against Peter Barrett, he was losing. The only reason he won that fight is because he submitted Barrett at the very last minute. We know what happened. Barrett got cut. It's actually interesting. Barrett's fighting this weekend as well on the local scene. So it's crazy how that can turn around. But do you remember that Alex Caceres fight? Cooper got absolutely dominated. And I know Steven Peterson lost to Caceres, I believe, as well. But Peterson, I think, is an underrated guy. And he's not that much older. Like he's 30, I think he's like 31 or something. He's 30 in that fight. So that's not like super young. He's kind of in the prime of his career. He's a Fortis guy. You know how high I am on that camp. He'll be a little undersized against Hooper, but Peterson just has way more experience, and he's got good stand-up, and I don't see him getting submitted. Like he's fought guys that have good submission game, like Leandro Higo, never been submitted. So I think if Hooper can't submit Steven Peterson, I think he can win here. I think minus 115, that might be worth a stab on Steven Peterson. I know that's not an underdog, but that's another fight I was looking at.
Yeah, I like Steven Peterson in this fight too, because I feel like, when I interviewed him, he told me that he's been training with Damon Jackson, on the ground with the grappling to get ready for Chase Hooper. And I think Damon Jackson is a perfect guy to to have to prepare for Chase Hooper. And Chase Hooper, like you said, he was losing to Peter Barrett. And then Peter Barrett just decided to go to the ground with him for some reason, right? And I don't think Steven Peterson is going to do that. I think Steven Peterson is going to go in there. He's going to try to establish the striking and then go in there and try to knock Chase Hooper's head off. And I could see that happening, man. I could see this fight ending early, you know what I mean, with just like a haymaker, because that's what Steven Peterson does. He goes in there and throws those haymakers, and sometimes those things land. And even though Chase has a good chin, but man, you can't put your chin out there all the time like that and not expect to get, KO'd one of these times.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time here today on the Fantasy Fanatics MMA show. If you guys have any questions, just hit us up on social media. We can answer you there. You can leave a comment on the video. We'll get back to you guys as soon as we can. We want to thank you so much for watching. Again, quick reminder, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on this channel. We do the show every single week, talking about an upcoming notable fight. And, again, giving you that early preview of a big fight coming up. And if there's any fights you want us to preview that you think would be interesting, please let us know on social media. I'm at Lynch on Sports. He's at JHK MMA. Make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. That's where you can do your picks. You can go toe-to-toe with us. And again, best app out there, Google, Android, Google, iPhone, doesn't matter. You can download it on either one of those stores to get it done here. Just a quick reminder, some programming notes. John and I will be doing a live stream on my YouTube channel on Saturday night, UFC 263, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. You can join the action there. You can submit questions. You can react to the fights with us on Saturday. We'll be back doing that. And anything else, John? What do you got going on this week? Anything interesting you want to share before we wrap things up?
Well, just follow me on social media, JHK MMA. It's on the bottom of the screen. Go to my YouTube page, John Hyon Co. or Kumite TV, and you can see everything that I'm doing on there. And yeah, man, it's always good to do the show with you, James, every week. And I'll see you on Sunday over here, actually.
That's right. Yeah, looking forward to it. For myself, James Lynch, that is JHK. Producer Michael, always doing some amazing work in the back. We will see you a week here today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your week.